Want to hear something wild? What if Supergirl was more like a space cowboy than a superhero? Let's dive into the 2026 film Supergirl.
Hey, I'm Leah, feeling super curious today.
And I'm Garrett, eagerly ready to explore this cinematic journey. Welcome to Laid Back Learning with Leah and Garrett.
Today's exploration is all about the 2026 film Supergirl, a new chapter in the DC universe that goes darker and edgier than you might expect from a cape story. I remember watching the trailer and being struck by how different this Supergirl felt compared to the Arrowverse version. It made me think about how superhero storytelling is evolving, shifting from shiny saviors to characters who carry scars and second thoughts.
All right, let's set the stage for this one. Supergirl, released June 2026, is directed by Craig Gillespie, who's known for stories about complicated, rule-breaking women. The script is by Ana Nogueira, and the film follows Kara Zor-El across the galaxy on a revenge-driven journey that tests her moral compass. It's part of the new DC Universe, or DCU, which is a soft reboot, meaning they refreshed tone and casting without throwing out everything about the brand.
It adapts major characters and themes from the comic Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow by writer Tom King and artist Bilquis Evely. Think of it as the same emotional core, but rebuilt as a three-act movie. Three-act structure is just setup, confrontation, resolution. Here, the setup launches Kara and a child named Ruthie on a vengeance trail. The confrontation is their trek across gnarlier and gnarlier worlds, and the resolution is Kara deciding what kind of person she's going to be, not just how powerful she is.
Millie Alcock plays Kara as an antihero. She's jaded, pixie-ish, but attitudinal, and more hard-edged than her cousin Superman. James Gunn and Peter Safran, co-CEOs of DC Studios, position this as the second DCU film, right after Superman, so it complements that optimism with, a tougher, road warrior vibe.
Let's back up to the early days, where it started to pivot. Back in August 2018, Warner Bros. Had Oren Uziel write a Supergirl movie for the prior DC Extended Universe, or DCEU. That effort never reached production. Then early 2020 hit, the pandemic stalled development, and priorities drifted.
Right. Then in 2021, Sasha Calle was cast as Supergirl for The Flash. She even filmed an alternate ending to seed more appearances. But 2022 changed the chessboard, with Warner Media and Discovery merging. New CEO David Zaslav reassessed everything. By August 2022, Rolling Stone reported the DCEU Supergirl was likely canceled.
Late October 2022 is the inflection point. James Gunn, writer-director-turned-studio head, and Peter Safran, a veteran producer, took over DC Studios and convened writers to plan an 8 to 10-year soft reboot. That meant recalibrating tone and continuity, not necessarily nuking everything from orbit.
In January 2023, they announced Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters, naming Supergirl as a big science fiction epic based on Woman of Tomorrow, and describing this Kara as more hardcore. Comics' demand for King and Evely's run immediately spiked. Copies sold out, which is like a live feedback loop between film and print.
By November 2023, Ana Nogueira was revealed as the screenwriter. Gunn called her draft a beautiful, star-spanning tale and elevated Supergirl to be the DCU's second movie. He also confirmed Krypto, the superdog from Krypton, would be in the story, which helps anchor Kara emotionally.
Casting tightened in January 2024. By month's end, Millie Alcock officially landed the role. Gunn said she had the edge, grace, and authenticity they were after. Why do you think Alcock clicked for this take specifically?
Because the story needs someone who can be fierce and wounded at the same time. This Kara grew up in the ruins of Argo City, so she copes with trauma, not just superpowers. Alcock's brusqueness and vulnerability make that believable. She can be cutting and then let the mask slip, which is perfect for an anti-hero build.
Once Craig Gillespie came aboard in 2024, things locked in. He's the director behind I, Tonya and Cruella, both about complicated women, and he pitched a road movie in space, inspired by True Grit and Logan. He reportedly brought 120 reference images, which, shows he had a strong visual thesis from the jump.
They structured the journey across 9 distinct alien worlds, each with its own language. Alcock even learned 5 constructed comic languages. That kind of detail is immersion. It quietly says this isn't just Earth with funny hats, this is a wider, harsher galaxy that Kara actually understands.
Rob Hardy shot on IMAX cameras, and he tuned the camera language to Kara's headspace. Frenetic, messy coverage when she's raging, smoother, more fluid moves when she's centered. IMAX is a large-format camera system that captures more detail and scale. In IMAX, fakery reads easier, so the style choices and practical effects matter more.
They also delayed when Kara puts on the suit. Earlier drafts had it sooner, but Gillespie held it back, so that moment becomes a character beat, not just a costume change. It's a visual way to say, I'm choosing responsibility, not just adrenaline.
Then Lobo enters the story. Jason Momoa plays him. He's an alien mercenary from the comics, added partly to help the 3-act structure and partly to test audience appetite. He's a jolt of swagger without taking the story over, but marketing definitely put him front and center.
Matthias Schoenaerts plays Krem of the Yellow Hills, the brigands' brutal leader. He's Viking-coded in look, which fits the lawless frontier vibe. And Ruthie, played by Eve Ridley, is the grief-stricken child whose father was murdered by Krem. Her moral clarity pushes Kara into the chase and keeps the story personal.
Tone-wise, it's a sharp contrast with David Cornswet's Superman, who's sunnier in the 2025 film. Kara parties on Red Sun worlds where she can actually get drunk, since red suns dampen Kryptonian powers, and cracks gallows jokes. It underlines that she copes sideways, not straight on.
Editors Tatiana S. Riegel and Fred Raskin balance the chase with needle drops, meaning recognizable songs placed prominently to set a vibe. Some loved the energy, some felt it was too much. Either way, it's a clear stylistic choice.
VFX came from Digital Domain, Framestore, and ILM, with Jeffrey Bauman supervising. Even with heavy CG, they baked in tactile elements. That's why the fireballs and on-set light play look convincing in IMAX. It's style married to readability. You can actually follow the chaos.
Production designer Neil Lamont gave each world its own palette and signage, while costume designer Anna B. Shepard leaned into wear and tear, especially for pirates like the brigands. Fun touch, Kara's cape used the same material lineage as Christopher Reeve's Superman, which links imagery across generations even as the character tone diverges.
So where the story lands is Kara testing justice versus vengeance. The final choice she makes about Krem underlines that she's capable of violence, but reaching for responsibility. That blend, anti-heroic instincts and a heroic outcome, makes her feel distinct in the DCU.
They even use Crypto, Kara's Kryptonian dog, as an emotional anchor. His poisoning is one of the turning screws that forces Kara to check her principles against real pain. Ruthie's steady stare keeps her honest. It's almost like the child becomes the conscience, right?
The film premiered June 2026 in Brooklyn and hit theaters, including IMAX, later that month. It was positioned as the DCU's second feature in Chapter 1, following Superman and preceding more crossovers down the road.
Critically, response was mixed. Rotten Tomatoes hovered around 59% with an average of about 5.7 out of 10. Metacritic logged a 50 out of 100. Praises clustered around Alcock's performance and small, intimate beats. Skepticism targeted the thin revenge spine and the density of those song cues.
Trade reviews reflected that split. The Hollywood Reporter called it True Grit meets John Wick meets Fury Road, but said the emotions weren't always deep. Variety thought motivations were too thin. IndieWire was more positive, arguing that the small-scale inquiry actually asked big questions. So yeah, a real spread.
Marketing went loud. There was a roughly $100 million promo push with brand partners. Trailers blasted Blondie's Call Me, and that graffitied lookout poster cheekily riffed on Superman's lookup tagline. It telegraphed a rebel energy from the jump.
Box office tracking started strong, above $55 million for opening weekend, then dipped to around $40 million. Variety later projected $47 to $50 million. Industry chatter pegged break-even near $315 million worldwide, not counting marketing. So expectations were tempered but watchful.
Music was a whole subplot behind the scenes too. Composers changed hands 3 times, from Ramin Djawadi to Tom Holkenborg and finally to Claudia Sarn, whose score dropped the day of release. That kind of turnover is rare, and people definitely noticed.
Meanwhile, some stunts were delightfully analog. They fired off practical 40-foot fireballs, and Jason Momoa actually rode a real motorcycle as Lobo. Those tactile pieces gave the big CG vistas a gritty spine.
It's all tied together by that subjective camera grammar, messy when Kara is angry, fluid when she's calm, which made me feel her swings rather than just watch them. That's close to the heart of it.
Okay, here's a tricky one. There's a disputed budget floating around. Some reports listed $200 million, but James Gunn publicly pushed back. Later reporting put the net budget near $170 million. Net in this context generally means the cost to make the movie itself before adding full marketing spend.
And that raises the question, how much should we care about the exact figure? Budgets are often moving targets. Marketing is separate, and exchange rates, rebates, and tax incentives can blur what the number actually is. I'm more interested in whether the story moved me than if a spreadsheet reconciles to the penny.
Totally fair, but I'll argue for transparency. Numbers shape expectations. They tell us what kind of risk was taken. If a project costs closer to $170 million than $200 million, that's meaningful for investors and for what counts as success. It also calibrates sequel chances and spin-off moves like, say, a potential Lobo vehicle.
Why, though, should that change the experience for people in the seats? When I'm watching Kara decide whether vengeance defines her, the cost lines don't deepen the emotion. If anything, fixating on budget can flatten a complicated story into a scoreboard, and this one's messy on purpose.
Because the cost connects to creative freedom. If the studio spends less, they may be more willing to protect challenging choices, like keeping the original ending rather than testing alternate ones, since the downside risk is smaller. That's what I see Gunn doing here. He backed Gillespie's intended finale, even amid mixed test chatter.
I hear that, and I appreciate that he guarded the ending. But I still think the deeper value is in the writer-first approach. Ana Nogueira's script was strong enough to bump this up the slate. That's a creative North Star, not a line item. If audiences connect with Kara and Ruthie, then the budget debate fades into background noise.
One place where budget does show up on screen is music rights and marketing. Those needle drops aren't cheap, and a $100 million promo campaign is a statement. I like the swagger, but I also wonder if dollars there pulled attention from, quieter character beats that critics wanted more of.
Flip side, the songs and the Lookout poster set a clear identity and told me to expect a punchier, more cynical ride than Superman. And those practical fireballs, a very not cheap choice, paid off in IMAX where fakery can feel thin. So, for me, if the money is on the screen, I'm good not knowing every precise bucket.
We're basically landing on the same runway from different headings. I want clearer reporting to build trust after a wobbly DCEU era. You're saying show me story integrity first, numbers second. That's a solid point.
And I totally get the trust angle. Real talk, if the DCU keeps backing filmmaker intent like they did here, that trust builds either way.
In pop culture terms, this movie wears its inspirations. True Grit shows up in the steely kid and the morally gray protector. Logan is in the melancholic road tone. The Fifth Element vibes in the parade of weird worlds. And John Wick creeps in through revenge momentum. It's a mash that signals the DCU's tonal range.
And the marketing, including Call Me, Blasting, and the Lookout graffiti, framed Kara as the franchise's counterpoint to Hope and Joy Superman. Plus, Lobo's first big screen appearance enters the pop lexicon. Even with limited screen time, he left a footprint that fans will debate for a while.
What if Sasha Calle's Supergirl had continued into a full DCEU feature, carrying momentum from The Flash? Calle, for anyone who missed it, played Supergirl in that 2023 film and reportedly shot an alternate ending to set up more. Imagine that string didn't get cut by the reboot.
I picture a more tightly intertwined DCEU with immediate crossovers and some existing character relationships rolling forward. Maybe less of a road movie melancholy and more classic continuity handoffs. I could see them leaning into the Flash threads and building a team-up roadmap faster, even if it meant fewer big stylistic swings like the 9 languages detour.
Tone would shift for sure. Kala's version felt earnest inside chaos, whereas Alcock's Kara leans abrasive and guarded. Without the DCU reset, Woman of Tomorrow might not have been the bowl the story got poured into. Maybe Krem and Ruthai aren't central, and Lobo debuts later or elsewhere. The vibe could land closer to a straight spin-off than a genre remix.
And the release timeline changes. If that DCEU movie moved sooner, the arc about a jaded survivor choosing heroism might have softened. Marketing might connect dots directly to the Flash instead of that lookout inversion of Superman. Not gonna lie, I'm glad we got the weirder road. But it's a fun alternate path to imagine. Stay curious, everyone.
And keep exploring those rabbit holes. Until next time, on Laid Back Learning.